The message came at 2 a.m., and it wasn't the words that scared me. It was the confidence behind them. The certainty that after everything she had done, after the way she left, she still believed she had power over me. I stared at my phone in the dark. My room silent, my heart strangely calm. That was the moment I realized something had changed inside me. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was awake. You're watching Revenge Time X. If you enjoy real revenge stories, the kind that don't rely on shouting or violence but on patience and truth, subscribe before I continue. Because this story isn't about what she did to me. It's about what I allowed her to believe, right until the end. I met her when I thought love was supposed to feel intense all the time. She was charming in a way that made you feel chosen. When she paid attention to me, I felt important. When she ignored me, I felt desperate to earn it back. I didn't understand then that this was not love. It was control wearing a smile. At first, everything felt exciting. She texted constantly. She wanted to know where I was, who I was with, what I was thinking. I thought it meant she cared. Slowly, the questions became accusations. The affection became conditional. If I disagreed with her, she went silent. If I apologized, she returned warmer than before. I learned quickly what behavior was rewarded and what was punished. Friends noticed before I did. They said I looked tired. They said I sounded unsure of myself. I defended her every time. I told myself relationships were hard. I told myself I just needed to try harder. The betrayal didn't happen all at once. It happened in layers. She flirted openly with others and told me I was insecure for noticing. She read my messages and told me privacy was a red flag. She compared me to people who had hurt her before and said I was lucky she stayed. When she finally left, it wasn't dramatic. No fight, no closure. She told me she needed space, then blocked me everywhere. I spent months replaying every conversation, every mistake, trying to understand what I had done wrong. That was the humiliation, not the breakup. The way she made me doubt my own reality. I broke down quietly alone. I stopped sleeping properly. I checked my phone even when I knew there would be nothing. I rehearsed conversations that would never happen. I hated myself for missing someone who treated me like an option. Time passed. Slowly, I rebuilt. I stopped talking about her. I focused on work. I learned how silence could feel peaceful instead of threatening. I thought I was done. Then at 2 a.m., my phone lit up. A number I didn't recognize at first. One message. I know you're still thinking about me. I didn't reply. I read it again and again. My chest tightened, not with fear but with clarity. She hadn't changed. She just assumed I hadn't either. Over the next few nights, more messages came, short, sharp, designed to provoke. She reminded me of private moments. She mocked how quiet I used to be during arguments. She told me I would never find someone like her again. I understood then what she wanted. A reaction. Proof that she still mattered. Proof that she still lived in my head. That's when I started planning. I didn't block her. I didn't confront her. I let the messages come. I archived them. I documented patterns, times, words, the way her tone shifted when she didn't get a response, the way confidence turned into irritation. I also started responding, carefully, not emotionally, politely, briefly, just enough to keep her talking, just enough to let her believe she still had influence. She began opening up, complaining about her life, her new relationships, how people always disappointed her. She blamed everyone except herself. I listened. I asked neutral questions. I never defended myself. That confused her. Inside, I felt steady. The power dynamic was changing, and she didn't notice. I shared just enough about my life to make it look stable, calm, and proved. I never bragged. I never complained. I let her fill in the gaps with her imagination. That did more damage than any insult. Then she crossed a line. She threatened to share old private messages if I didn't meet her. That threat was familiar. That was who she had always been. This time I was ready. I didn't react to the threat right away. I let it sit. I let the silence stretch. I knew her well enough to understand what silence did to her. It made her anxious. It made her reckless. She sent another message an hour later, pretending the threat had been a joke. Then another asking if I was okay. Then one more, colder, saying she didn't like being ignored. That was when I replied. I told her I remembered everything. I told her I wasn't afraid of the past anymore. I said it calmly, without emotion. Just facts. That message unsettled her. I could feel it through the screen. She asked what I meant. I didn't explain. Instead, I suggested we talk properly. Not me, just talk. On the phone. I chose a time that worked for me, not for her. That was new. She noticed. When we spoke, her voice was confident at first, familiar. She laughed like nothing had ever happened. She spoke as if the years between us were just a pause. I let her talk. I listened the way I always had, quietly. Then she started testing boundaries. Little insults disguised as jokes. Old criticisms. She waited for me to shrink. I didn't. I told her I had changed. That I had learned things about myself. about her. I didn't accuse. I didn't attack. I just described patterns. Her patterns, calmly, one by one. Her breathing changed. She tried to interrupt. I kept speaking. Not louder. Just steadier. I told her how the late-night messages were predictable. How the need to provoke came from insecurity, not strength. How threatening to expose private conversations said more about her than me. She went quiet. That silence was different. Not strategic. Not manipulative. It was fear. She asked how I knew all that. I said I had time to think after she left. She laughed nervously and said I was overanalyzing. I told her I wasn't analyzing anymore. I was observing. After that call, the messages stopped for a while. Days passed, then weeks. I thought it might be over. But toxic people don't disappear when they lose control. They circle back when they think you've forgotten. She reached out again, softer this time, apologetic. She said she missed how I used to understand her. She said she had made mistakes. She asked if we could start over. That was the moment I felt something close to anger. Not explosive, focused. I told her I forgave her. That word confused her more than anything else. Forgiveness implied closure. Closure implied she no longer had a role. She asked what that meant for us. I told her there was no us. There hadn't been for a long time. She accused me of leading her on, of changing, of becoming cold. She said the person she knew would never talk to her like this. I told her the person she knew didn't exist anymore. That was when she lost control completely. The messages came fast, accusations, insults, then desperation. She swung between rage and apology, trying every version of herself she had ever used on me. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I saved everything. When she realized she couldn't provoke me, she tried to hurt me. She contacted people from my past. She spread stories, twisted truths, half-lies, the same way she always had. But this time I had proof. Screenshots, timelines, messages sent at 2. AM threats, manipulation laid out clearly. I didn't post them publicly. I didn't expose her online. I didn't need that kind of noise. I sent them to one person, her new partner, not with commentary, not with emotion, just the facts. The timestamps, the patterns, the messages sent while she claimed to be healing. I don't know what conversation they had. I only know what happened next. She called me repeatedly. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails I never listened to. Messages begging me to explain, to fix it, to take it back. I blocked her number. That was the execution. Quiet, final, clean. Weeks later, a mutual acquaintance told me her relationship had ended badly. That she was telling people I had ruined her life. That she didn't understand how I could be so calm. I understood perfectly. She had lived her life believing she could control the narrative. Control people. Control outcomes. She had never expected consequences to arrive without drama. That was the revenge. Not her pain. Not her loss. The realization that she no longer mattered enough to be hated. I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. Like something I had been carrying for years finally slipped out of my hands. The 2 a.m. message was supposed to pull me back into her world. Instead, it reminded me why I left. I sleep through the night now. My phone stays dark. When it buzzes, it's not fear that wakes me. It's peace. Some people confuse silence with weakness. They don't understand what it means when someone finally stops responding. Because when you stop reacting, you take everything back. After I blocked her, I expected relief to come all at once. It didn't. What came instead was quiet. A deep, unfamiliar quiet that felt almost too open. For years, my mind had been filled with her voice, her reactions, her judgments. When that disappeared, there was space. And space can feel uncomfortable when you're not used to it. The first few nights were strange. I would wake up out of habit, half expecting my phone to light up. It didn't. No 2 a.m. messages, no accusations. No apologies disguised as concern. Just darkness and the sound of my own breathing. That's when I understood how much of myself I had given away without realizing it. I started noticing small things again. Mornings felt slower. Coffee tasted stronger. I could sit with my thoughts without arguing with an imaginary version of her in my head. The constant tension in my chest began to loosen, but the story didn't end cleanly for her. She tried reaching me through other people, old friends, mutual contacts. She framed it as concern, as confusion, as heartbreak. She said she didn't understand why I had changed so much, why I was being so cruel by disappearing. I didn't respond. What disturbed her wasn't the breakup of her relationship. It was the loss of access to me, the loss of influence. She had always relied on knowing she could pull me back whenever she wanted. That certainty was gone. People began to notice patterns they had ignored before. Her mood swings, her contradictions, the way every story placed her as the victim and someone else as the villain. Without me quietly absorbing her chaos, it spilled outward. I heard that she cycled through emotions rapidly. One day she was angry at me, the next nostalgic, then self-righteous, then broken, She rewrote our history depending on who was listening, but no version brought me back. That was when the fear crept in for her. Not fear of me doing something, fear of me doing nothing. She once told someone she couldn't stand the idea that I might be telling my side of the story calmly, confidently, without emotion. That thought unsettled her more than confrontation ever had, because it meant I wasn't trying to win. I had already moved on. I never corrected the narrative. I never defended myself publicly. I didn't need to. The truth has a way of settling when you stop disturbing it. Months passed. My life didn't become extraordinary. It became stable, honest. I built routines that belonged to me. I surrounded myself with people who didn't make me question my worth. I learned the difference between intensity and connection. Sometimes, late at night, I would remember that first message. The confidence in it, the assumption that I was still waiting, still available, still hers to summon. She was wrong. The revenge was never about hurting her. It was about refusing to be pulled back into a cycle that thrived on my reaction. It was about choosing myself quietly, without explanation. I think that's what haunted her the most. That there was no final argument she could replay. No dramatic goodbye she could reinterpret. No clear moment where she could say she won or lost. Just absence. And absence is something manipulative people don't know how to fight. The last thing I heard about her was that she described me as impossible to read. Now, that I felt distant, even in memory. That she couldn't tell if I ever loved her or if she had imagined everything. I didn't correct that either. Some questions don't deserve answers. Some doors are meant to stay closed. The 2 a.m. message was meant to test me. It proved instead that I had already passed. There was a moment much later when I realized she had become afraid of the same things she once used against me. Silence, distance, not knowing. She used to disappear for days and call it space. Now, when people didn't reply to her immediately, she spiraled. She read tone into punctuation. She questioned intentions behind neutral words. She once said that unanswered messages made her heart race because she never knew what they meant anymore. She was living inside the uncertainty she created. I didn't celebrate that. I didn't even think about it often. But when I did, I understood something important. Toxic people survive on reaction. They need resistance, anger, pleading, explanations. When all of that is removed, they are left alone with themselves. That is not a place they know how to survive. I ran into someone who knew her well, months after everything ended. They mentioned her name casually, watching my face for a reaction. I gave none. That confused them. They said she still talked about me sometimes, but never with anger anymore. Always with caution, like I was a lesson. That word stayed with me. I didn't become harder after her. I became clearer. I learned to trust my discomfort, to listen when something felt wrong instead of explaining it away. I learned that love doesn't require you to shrink to be accepted. Sometimes late at night, I think about how that 2 a.m. message could have pulled me back into years of emotional chaos. How close I was to replying with anger, or hurt or longing. But I didn't. That restraint changed everything. The most unsettling part of revenge is not watching someone fall. It's realizing you don't need to watch at all. That your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. She thought she was reopening a door. What she actually did was remind me why I locked it. I don't carry resentment anymore. Resentment requires ongoing connection. I carry understanding, and understanding is final. Somewhere, she still wonders what would have happened if she hadn't sent that message. If she had left things untouched. If she had let sleeping memories lie. She'll never know. Because the last power she thought she had over me disappeared the moment I chose not to respond the way she expected. That is how it ends. Not with confrontation, not with forgiveness, not with closure. It ends with a phone screen that stays dark, a message that doesn't get a reply, and a life that continues quietly without her in it. The fear became disturbing when it stopped being about me entirely. It stopped needing my presence, my words, or even my memory to survive. It became automatic, a reflex, something that woke up inside her before logic had time to speak. She started interpreting neutral events as threats. A delayed reply from anyone made her stomach drop. A read receipt without a response felt like punishment. She told someone once that when her phone stayed silent for too long, she felt exposed, like she had done something wrong and just didn't know what yet. That feeling followed her everywhere. She began over-explaining herself in conversations, filling silences too quickly, apologizing before anyone accused her of anything. She tried to control how people perceived her, because she could no longer tolerate being misunderstood. Misunderstanding felt dangerous now. The irony was cruel. She used to twist my words and deny my reality with ease. Now she questioned her own sentences the moment they left her mouth. She replayed conversations in her head, searching for mistakes, wondering how they might sound later, wondering how they could be used. She once said she hated nights the most. At night there were no distractions, no conversations to manage, no reactions to read. Just her thoughts. and her thoughts never stopped asking the same question. How long does someone have to stay quiet before you should be afraid? She couldn't sleep without checking her phone multiple times, not because she expected a message from me, because she feared what the silence might mean. Silence had become a reminder that people could know more than they showed. That calm didn't mean safety. She started avoiding emotionally steady people. People who didn't overshare. People who listened more than they spoke. She described them as unsettling. She preferred chaos now, because chaos was loud and predictable. Stillness wasn't. I heard that she once broke down after a co-worker calmly disagreed with her and then changed the subject. No argument, no explanation, just quiet certainty. It shook her. She said later that it reminded her of me. That reaction scared her, because she realized the fear hadn't followed me. It had stayed with her. I never contacted her again. I never checked on her. I never needed to. The revenge had moved beyond action, lived in the way she anticipated judgment where none existed, in the way she braced for consequences even in harmless moments. She had learned something she could never unlearn, that the most dangerous people are not the loud ones. They are the ones who watch, who wait, who decide when they are done. I wasn't a threat anymore, but the idea of me was, and ideas are harder to escape than people. I never intended to become a shadow in her life. But that's what happens when you leave without noise. She began second-guessing people who showed calm confidence. Anyone who didn't react strongly to her stories unsettled her. She wondered what they were thinking, what they noticed, what they chose not to say. She once admitted that she missed arguments, because at least arguments showed engagement. Silence felt like judgment waiting to happen. She started imagining consequences where none existed. A manager asking for a private meeting made her heart pound. A friend saying, "We'll talk later," ruined her entire day. She prepared explanations in advance for questions that were never asked. Her life became a series of rehearsals for confrontations that didn't come. And the worst part was that there was no one to blame. I wasn't there to accuse her. I wasn't there to expose her. I wasn't there to demand anything. So the fear had nowhere to land. It circled back inward. She tried to recreate the old dynamic with others, but it never worked the same. Some people left quietly. Some set boundaries she couldn't cross. Some simply didn't engage deeply enough to be controlled. Each time that happened, it reinforced the same terrifying truth. People can walk away without explanation. And when they do, you don't get to rewrite the ending. That truth kept her awake more than guilt ever could. For me, life became simpler. Not easier, but cleaner. I stopped mistaking intensity for intimacy. I stopped believing that love had to hurt to be real. I learned that peace doesn't announce itself. It just stays. Sometimes, when my phone lights up late at night, there's a brief flicker in my chest. A memory, not a fear. Then it fades. Because I know who I am now. And she knows something too. She knows that there are people who will leave without warning. Who won't fight. Who won't explain. Who won't come back. She learned that lesson from me. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I chose silence over survival mode, distance over drama, and clarity over control. That is the kind of ending that doesn't feel loud. It feels empty. And for someone who lived off reaction, that emptiness is the most disturbing thing of all. There is one detail I never shared before. Long after everything ended, after the fear had settled into her routines and my life had moved forward, she sent one last message. Not to me, to someone else. It was a simple question. Do you think he ever thinks about me? That question said more than any apology ever could. Because it wasn't about love. It wasn't about regret. It was about relevance. She needed to know if she still existed in my mind. And that need never went away. What disturbed her wasn't the idea that I hated her. Hate would have meant connection, emotion, energy, what? Frightened her was the possibility that I remembered her the way you remember a closed chapter, clearly, calmly, without urgency. She once told someone that she feared running into me someday, not because of what I might say, but because she imagined I would look at her politely, like a stranger. That thought made her hands shake, because strangers don't owe explanations. Strangers don't carry guilt. Strangers don't reopen wounds. And in that imagined moment, she saw herself clearly, not as the center of a story, just a person who passed through someone else's life and was left behind. I never needed to confront her. I never needed to warn her. I never needed to show her what she lost. Life did that quietly. The fear didn't scream. It didn't chase her. It didn't demand anything. It waited, in pauses, in unread messages, in calm voices that didn't flinch, in people who listened and then chose differently. That kind of fear doesn't fade with time. It deepens. And me? I sleep through the night now. My phone stays face down. My thoughts stay my own. And silence feels like safety, not punishment. If she ever thinks about me, it's probably the same way you think about a door you can't open anymore. Not because it's locked, but because you already walked away from it once, and you know it won't lead where it used to. That is where this truly ends. Not with revenge you can see, but with a fear that has no face, no voice, no enemy. Just the quiet understanding that some people leave, and the power never comes back. And the most disturbing part? No one has to do anything at all. After that, nothing dramatic happened. No confrontation, no apology, no sudden twist. Just time. Time passed in a way that didn't include her. Days stacked into weeks, weeks into months. Her name stopped appearing in conversations. Her memory stopped arriving uninvited. Even the fear I once felt around her reactions dissolved into something neutral, like remembering an old address you no longer live at. But for her, time moved differently. I heard she still checked her phone late at night, still reread old conversations with different people, trying to decode what went wrong. Still wondered how someone could disappear so completely without trying to punish her first. Because punishment would have made sense to her. Silence never did. Silence offered no rules, no timeline, no way to fix things. It didn't tell her what to feel or how long to feel it. It just existed, calm, unresponsive, final. That's what made it disturbing. There was no enemy to fight, no story to win, no reaction to control. Only the slow realization that some people don't leave to be chased. They leave because they are done. I think deep down she knows that the 2 a.m. message wasn't a mistake. It was a test, one she expected to pass easily. When it failed, it rewrote something inside her that couldn't be undone. Not because I became powerful, but because I stopped being available. The world doesn't warn you when your influence ends. It just stops responding the way it used to. And when that happens, you're left alone with questions that have no answers. I don't wonder about her anymore. If she wonders about me, that's her burden to carry. My life doesn't feel victorious. It feels quiet, balanced, unremarkable in the best possible way. No emotional emergencies, no late-night explanations, no fear of a message changing my mood. Just sleep, just peace, just the understanding that the most permanent endings don't arrive with noise. They arrive when someone reads your message and chooses never to answer again. The strange thing about endings like this is that you don't feel them arrive. They don't slam the door. They don't announce themselves. They just settled. Sometimes I imagine her sitting alone somewhere, phone in her hand, staring at a screen that doesn't change. Not waiting for me exactly, waiting for proof that silence isn't permanent, waiting for something to confirm that she still matters the way she once did. But nothing comes. And nothing coming is the answer. I don't think she remembers my voice clearly anymore. Memory blurs tones first, then expressions, then meaning. All that remains is the feeling she can't place, the discomfort, the sense that something important slipped away without permission. That feeling doesn't shout. It hums, low, constant. It follows her into quiet rooms, into pauses in conversation, into moments where no one is watching her closely. It asks questions without words. Why didn't he fight? Why didn't he beg? Why didn't he come back? There is no reply, and that is what makes it linger. For me, the nights are different now. When my phone lights up, my body doesn't tense. When it stays dark, I don't feel abandoned. Silence no longer feels like rejection. It feels earned. I don't replay conversations anymore. I don't imagine alternate endings. I don't wonder what I should have said. The story ended the moment I stopped explaining myself. That kind of ending doesn't give closure to everyone, only to the one who walks away. If she ever speaks my name now, I imagine it sounds unfamiliar in her mouth. Like a word from a language she once knew but never truly understood. Something she can still pronounce but no longer control. And one day even the questions will fade. What remains will be a quiet truth she can't escape. That some people don't leave to be remembered. They leave to disappear. And when they do, the silence they leave behind doesn't punish. It just stays, unmoving, unanswering, final.